Hello, everybody. Welcome back to season three, episode three of the season four after show. I miss season three, it's true, but this is season four. Today I'm here with Ryan, Lucas, and Karina, a snake, a dove, and Karina can talk a little bit more about her role in this season as well. But I'd love to just jump right in, do some introductions, and talk a little bit about where you are now, since the filming of the show. Ryan, if you want to start.
Okay, yeah. Um, so I was a dove on season four. Let's see, I graduated last year, so class of 2024. And I'm in Japan now. I'm on the JET program. So I'm an English teacher for like a Japanese public school. So yeah, I'm living in Japan. I've been here for like 4 months. And it's cool. I just get to like travel. I get to teach. I love the kids at my middle school. They're just like fun to like uh I don't know it's like a fun time. Like I like just like being involved. I like teaching, and I'm going on like a ton of trips. So I've just been having like really fun like post grad plans. So yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so jealous of you. Lucas, what about you?
Hi, my name is Lucas. On season four, as you're probably watching, and currently I'm a senior. I was a sophomore when I played, and I'll be graduating in just a couple months here. And after that, I'll be moving up to Montana for a job. So yeah.
Crazy. Okay, Karina.
Okay, hi, my name is Karina. I was not on season four, but I did end up being the sole editor for the whole season. So all of the footage strung together, that was all me locked in the editor's dungeon for the last 6 months. And I finally seen the light of day and I'm excited to talk about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear your perspective on things because you weren't even like here for when we filmed it, so I think it's super interesting to like know what it
Yeah.
looks like all together, just like without even having been there in the moment, the way that the story is coming through, I think shows like yeah, how real it all really was. But yeah, okay, so I want to jump right into the episode. We have the challenge, we have the twist. There's a lot going on. But I want to spend some time talking about the challenge because this challenge was one of my favorites on production. I remember going to the store with Joseph, and we were just devious when we were picking out the foods that we were like gonna bring and like the different things we were gonna put together. Like the baby food meat, we saw that and we were like, we have to get this. Like this has to be one of the options. But yeah, I want to know from like your guys' perspective what it was like to like play that challenge because like my season we had a spicy food challenge, but I think yours was debatably worse for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of like a game of Russian roulette, except there was a bullet in all six chambers. So it was kind of a whether you got something that you were hating but didn't hate that much, or something you couldn't stand. And as you kind of got into the later rounds, and when I got eliminated, I got something that was just like my worst nightmare combination. So overall, from a challenge standpoint, I think it was very fun to watch, but it was not very fun to play.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, you like beasted some of those rounds for sure.
I'm gonna say I disagree. I was in my element with that one. That's by far like my favorite challenge of the entire season. It was, I don't know, I like it was just fun. I like seeing all like the different like combinations of food, all like the gross shit that like could possibly just be like concocted. I don't know. It was fun. It was fun seeing like other people just like other people's reactions and just like I don't know how like gross like some of the smoothies became. But I don't know. It was just a fun like challenge. I liked competing in it, and I remember like I was watching myself in the video, and I'm kind of like just really happy. And I remember like just I don't know, I thought it was all just like really funny. I don't know why. But yeah, it was. I think it was definitely like one of my favorite like challenges of the entire season. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I remember like losing it on the sidelines every time like a new combination was pulled. I was like, there's no way this is real. Like they're actually like of course this is the combination like and we got to use like all the different faces and we got to throw in like I think most of the random stuff we pulled. But yeah, I think like the orange juice, the milk, the Coke, the coffee, like you start there and then you throw in like olives and beans and it's already like what the hell, right? Like it's crazy. Karina, I'm curious what editing that one was like.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I think it might have been Lucas that said, like, I'm sure it was fun to watch. I will say this is like my least favorite challenge to edit. It might also just be because like I'm such like a squeamish person, but I just remember specifically like having to edit the segment where Hannah's like throwing up. Like that is not fun. Like watching people like drink horrible stuff, and I was like I remember like being like, oh, if I was a contestant, like I would literally like forfeit this challenge. Like I don't think I could even do this. So I have much respect for the people who did it, but yeah, I think like was definitely fun to like edit, especially because you can really like people's personalities come out a lot in this. I think a lot of times people are like so zoned in on the challenge, but this was like a little bit more social, and there were so many like fun conversations between people on the tables that unfortunately I had to cut out, but I think I kept one where Iman was like, "What is the baby food meat?" And Evan's like, "I guess you'll have to find out, you know?" And it's like small little fun offhand comments like that were just like where I think this challenge like shone the most. I feel like, yeah, definitely like seeing Ryan super excited to like eat everything. Also, Lena was like so excited to eat stuff. That was like my favorite part of it for sure.
Yeah, and Evan, I think just such a good job Jeffing this challenge, especially like watching it. I like got a lot of energy from him. Like there's the little moment where he's pushing the blender button and he does like the little dance. Like I thought that was so funny. Like that's so Evan. He's having such a good time with it. And everyone else, I mean, I guess not everyone else, but most other people are like, "Oh my God, what is he doing?" You know, like what is he making us? Yeah, I thought like the interaction between the host and the players also was like really great during that challenge, and like yeah, it definitely shows a lot of people's personality.
I think production too, because they were like on the sidelines while like the challenge was being played, and I feel like you guys were just like super just happy and just like wanted to see like what like shit was like going to be like blended together. So I feel like that energy was like feeding off of like or just like contributing to like just like the vibes on like the contestants like at the tables. I don't know. So I feel like the production uh just like in the background was just kind of like is contributing to like the mood of like the entire challenge. So it was fun.
Yeah, there definitely was hype around that one, for sure.
We'll say there was like the section when Kelsey is drinking. And that section is much longer. I think it took her a really long time to finish that. But it got to the point where, like you said, like people from production were like cheering her on. And I think like you might even be able to, if you like go back and watch the episode, like hear the person who's filming Kelsey when she's drinking. At one point, she like whispers, "Good job," like because like everyone, everyone on production, I'm sure was like rooting for them, and it was like very, very evident. That like obviously we cut around most of it, but I'm sure you guys could feel the energy of like everyone there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember that challenge, and the clues, right? Like the clue goes, under the table, who's gonna find it. And yeah, I was talking to someone about how it was interesting that we chose to hide clues there regardless. I don't really remember what our reasoning was because the idols were found. I think we just wanted to create paranoia about things being in the game and wanted people to go look for things. Because I mean, that like ends up like amounting to like a really good like bid for the Snakes tribe this episode. I would say like this like dynamic between Annika, Vince, and Nia, like literally because Annika pulled this clue, I think really contributes to a lot of what we see from the Snakes in this episode. And yeah, I mean, it was a good challenge. There's good energy, and just like that's one of the fun ones, it's not serious, right? There are some challenges that are like serious. I think we'll see some of those coming soon. But this one is like very, I would say, lighthearted, and it's food, and everyone's in it together. It's gross, it sucks, and you're not pushing each other or anything like that. Um, but I want to talk about the twist. I loved the twist this episode. I don't remember how we came up with it, but I remember once we finalized it, we were so confident actually that both tribes were absolutely going to vote someone out. Like there was no doubt in our minds. Like we were like someone is going home on each tribe. Like we were really hoping that like someone would leave with maybe like a couple votes, something like that. But I actually think that the way it played out is, again, even more poetic. It's literally like the first episode where it's like one dove takes the clue and four snakes take the clue. Like the fact, and maybe it's because I totally would be on the snake tribe, but like seriously, Ryan, the fact that you guys didn't vote anyone out boggles my mind. Like it's insane to me. Like, can you speak on that? Because I would never trust enough. I'm like, someone could put one vote down, it could be for me, and I could go home. Like, I feel like I would totally vote.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think just speaking a little bit on that, it wasn't so simple as like, oh, we're doves, like we're not going to like vote, like it's an easy thing. Like I almost like, uh, I mean, I considered voting someone else and just like writing down a name just because like at a certain point I got paranoid that like somebody knew like who I was close with and was like going to take me out, which like Loki kind of like actually happened just rewatching like the episode because my name, I think Kelsey had said like my name because I think it was yeah, it was Dunker, Jude, Kelsey, and Hannah talking, and they're like, "Oh, like what about Matthew? What about Ryan?" I think it's Kelsey that's like, "Oh, like he's like close with like Elena, and like Elena, like I'd like rather work with, so like why not just like limit the amount of power that that smaller like alliance has by just like gutting like Ryan like immediately." So I was worried about something like that, and ironically, I was thinking about like if I were to like vote somebody, I probably would have written like Kelsey's name down. So it
Mm.
was like in the back of my head. So it wasn't like super like gung ho as to like, oh, I'm not voting, like it's easy. Cause like the paranoia just hits me. But the only thing that I feel like made us all confident in not voting and like assuage my fears was that like I knew that the snakes were just immediately going to vote somebody out, just like I know like it was their nature. And I remember I like as soon as we like after this movie challenge, uh, we all like got into a circle, and I was the like first one to say like we're not like voting because if we like have a numbers advantage, like even if I don't know, like down the line, we're gonna like not like we're all doves now. So like down the line, if we just have like seven like to their six, it'll be like advantageous for all of us. And so like I think we could like all agree that if we don't like if one of us doesn't go home and the snakes vote somebody out, then it'll like help benefit or like it'll probably benefit like all of us for like the rest of the season. And so I think that was the decision that made it like none of us are voting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't even consider that, and I think like it definitely on paper makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I don't know. I think I'm always just like baffled, seriously, that not a single person wrote a name down. Lucas, do you agree that like it was in y'all's nature immediately? Because like it gets talked about in the episode that there were like 5 minutes where people were like considering not voting, and it was like, nah, it's a normal tribal, like right away. Like, was that your perception?
I think my perception was that I think it was like one of those experiments where like both groups didn't know who they were. Or if you like swapped us and said we were like the Dove tribe, I don't think we would have voted. Because I think we just had that stigma and reputation about us that
Mm.
inherently kind of created that just distrust within our own tribe. And so like as soon as like we got out of the challenge, it was like, oh, you cannot vote someone, but one vote can send you home. Everyone immediately just distrusted everyone else as far as like not voting for them. And I think there's already kind of some tension that was going on because we had that stigma about us that like, oh, we're the snakes. Like someone's gonna pull something shady, and I don't want to get caught by that. So I'm gonna make sure that it's not me who has their name on the block.
Now I want to like run this experiment, like test this hypothesis, like bring everyone back.
Yeah.
We're telling you you're the doves now. They're the snakes. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I never even would have considered that. I think my perception, and I don't know, Karina, I mean, you've seen all the footage, right? So maybe you know, but like I think that just the pace and like the competitive energy that you guys were playing out was just like a little bit more intense. And I don't know, I kind of feel like there would have been a vote there, but maybe not. I don't know. Karina, what do you think?
Yeah, you guys, I think this like comes up literally every episode, which is just like the snakes are constantly like I look through their like self tapes, right? You submit your own folders of footage that you take for yourself. And there's so much snake footage that never makes it in because it's like this episode, like everybody met with Cameron, for example, but it's like none of those conversations ultimately factored into something, sort of. And so, none of that footage gets used. This conversation from the Doves was the only game conversation I think they had and the only self-tape that they submitted. And so it really is like, yeah, the snakes are like running circles around themselves, like really optimizing all of their moves and figuring out what they want to do. And the Doves are very, very low key. It's like they're playing with it dialed down. And I always think about like the opening of that conversation starts with, I think it's Jude saying, do we want to go and say our favorite fruits again? Like that was just that's what they would record. And the first 5 minutes of that conversation was mine is peaches, mine is oranges, like blah blah blah. Meanwhile, Annika and Nia are like, who has the clue? Are you gonna tell Lena? Like
That's
it's
awesome.
really such a like this episode specifically, you can really see the difference between the gameplay.
That's
Yeah, and I also just want to say I think that just goes like to the casting of it. Like I do think the reputation kind of harmed us, but I think Karina's dead on the fact that like all of us were really in it to play, and all of us were really like scheming and talking a lot. And it was like every day you were talking to someone, and if you weren't talking to someone, like you were in trouble. And so I think that kind of goes with Karina says that like there definitely was that personality difference as well. I think that's a good factor.
yeah.
I
Yeah, go for it.
on the other side of that too, I think just like from the dub perspective, like it was weird because like the first couple days, like you did want to talk to people, you did want to like reach out a little bit, but it was very much like if you're talking too much on the doves, then like it's not like a good thing, and it would be like, oh, this person's just like running around like talking to a whole bunch of like I don't know, so it felt different from like the snakes experience where like you need to be talking to like people in order to like get off of like people's radar and to seem like more uh like normal, or just to seem just like less of a threat. But like the doves, like I mean, I don't know, it was the doves. People just hardly just talked. It was hard to get like conversations out of people. It was hard to approach people. Like people just really didn't want to do that. So it was like it would have been like a bad thing to always just kind of like be running around and being too obvious about just like talking to like people. Like I feel like it was the opposite of like the snakes.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to the idea, again, my favorite meta, of the pace of the game. And I think like another piece of that is really matching the people that you're around, right? If you were on the Snakes tribe and you weren't talking to people, you were behind. But if you were on the Doves tribe and you were really talking to people, you're ahead, you're an obvious threat, like you're someone to be targeted, right? And so I think like it says a lot about people's social awareness at that point, right? And understanding of the game that like the snakes were really in step with each other and the doves really were in step with each other as well, in the way that they were playing the game. And I'm excited to see how all that changes as things get a little mixed up. Um, Going forward, I do want to talk about, with the twist, right, kind of heading into talking about the tribals and the strategy and all that. The episode title, of course, keeping your game in your own hands. This one goes to Cameron. Um, I think this really shows, kind of the idea of your twist or the twist. How, voting, you kind of, yeah, you by not voting, you kind of give up your fate. And I think though at the same time, like I think it's awesome like that the doves all like they choose to like let their fate rest in the hands of you take your fate out of your own hands and it still works out, whereas on the other hand, right, you have Cameron who's like, obviously we've got to vote, and he ends up going home, right? Like I think this really like captures kind of the essence of what this twist really was. But Lucas, talking about tribal, I'm really curious, was it always Cameron? Like in your mind, was it always Cameron?
It was not always Cameron, for sure. And I think like watching the show, you see that kind of clear path to Cameron going, but behind the scenes, especially in the Snake Tribe, it was like every day it was developing. There's always a new conversation happening. There's always someone new who was like, hey, what if we did this? What if we did this? You kind of had to toe that line of not throwing too many people's names out. And I think it was the day before Tribal that Cameron talked with like pretty much everyone on the Snake Tribe. And it got too concentrated. And I think you're talking about the pace of the game. Cameron was kind of behind. I think he had some stuff going on, but then he just talked to everyone and he kind of leapt up in that kind of pace of the game, and it spooked a lot of people.
Mm.
And even for me, he threw out a lot of people's names that we were kind of maybe supposed to be in alliance with. So that just kind of made it hard for me to justify to kind of my alliance that like, hey, look, maybe we should keep Cameron around. And going with that, I think there's a quote from Iman where it's like the four of us in the alliance, which was like me, Vince, Nia, and Iman. And the three of them were thinking Cameron, and I was kind of leaning towards Lena. But at the same time, early in the game, I didn't want to go against the grain too hard and then get kind of voted out that way, basically.
Yeah, Ryan. And then for you, like, I know you said you kind of thought, maybe you would have written Kelsey's name if you wrote a name down, but were there ever like conversations that you had with people surrounding like the potential of voting, or was it more like, yeah, this is the right decision. We're not going to do anything?
Not really. I mean, the conversations I really were having, it was like a little bit with Matthew, mostly just like Elena and Dunker. But like I think like by that time when I was having those conversations, the paranoia hadn't set in of like, oh shit, somebody could be writing like my name down, so I have to like think of like or like Kelsey or like it's like somebody else. It wasn't, but to I don't know, to be honest, just the idea because as soon as the challenge was over, like I go up to the group, I'm like, they're already the snakes are already at each other's throats. They're probably like throwing names left and right. So I think that that idea of like the fact that somebody from like their tribe is definitely going home was like I don't know the fact that somebody like for sure was going home from the snakes was like made us like feel fine that like in our decision that like we're not going to vote. And but there were definitely moments where yeah, I guess like paranoia had like set into like all of like our heads. Like I think that we've seen like the episode, but for the most part, it was fairly like certain that our confidence that we could like outsmart like the snakes and have like a numbers advantage because like we all like pooled together and like recognize that it would be like good for all of us in the future. I think that was enough assurance to kind of be like it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Another thing that I think stands out to me is how once like the idol thing kind of like dissipates on the Dove tribe, it's kind of just like gone. Like people weren't really talking or looking for the idols like very much, at least as far as I'm aware, after kind of that first episode or two. I'm sure people looked a little bit, right? But like then in the snakes discourse, on the other hand, like we end up seeing this being like really central. And Karina, I'm curious like your perspective on like because that was like a big part as I was saying earlier like of the strategy even though it wasn't really names and stuff. I think like it really was important like relationship building and Nia being like, yeah, I went and wrote down the clue and looked myself, like I think all that is really interesting. I'm curious from your perspective why all that is so vital.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like definitely this thing of Annika like finding this clue, I almost feel like really threw her forward in terms of like the snakes dynamics. I think in the last two episodes she was a little bit in like the backseat and yes, she was definitely gaming, she was throwing out people's names, but she almost like used this clue as like leverage where it's like, okay, I have this clue, let me tell Nia. And then they discuss, okay, should we tell Lena? I want to tell Lena because it's going to build trust with her. And then let me tell Vince because I want to build trust with Vince. And then they have this alliance meeting, and the first thing she says is, okay, so everybody knows I have this clue. And even though it's not a completely real alliance, at the same time, she's like still establishing herself within the snakes by saying, like, I have this clue, everybody knows, like, you can trust me, type of thing. I also, yeah, definitely like one of my favorite, like, moments of this segment was when Annika goes, I think she's like saying, I didn't want anybody to know that, Vince helped me look because, nobody knows that this is happening. And then immediately afterwards, Nia goes, Vince called me and said that they looked together, and it's like it already shows like the really snaky, like the snakiness of everybody, which is like we're a secret duo, and then immediately afterward, one of them is like telling everybody. And so it's like it shows like the dynamics of everything, like what's a secret, what's not a secret, who's going to snake each other, even in like the really small ways. And then also, like, how do you use something like an idol clue and suspicion about somebody or suspicion of who might have the idol clue to like build your alliances? Like, that I found really interesting. And that's something that, like, in the last couple episodes, it's like, people build like start off all their conversations with like who do you think has it, that's always the first way to really get a game conversation going.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's so fascinating like what people are using to connect and build trust, especially on this tribe that's like supposed to be inherently snaky. Lucas, I'm curious if you had any awareness of this whole situation because I mean, you also have this segment establishing the Vanilla Vodka alliance with Nia, and you're also pretty close with Vince. I'm curious how much you were clued in on all of this.
I had a pretty good like information kind of web going. Like I was hearing stuff come in, but normally I was just a little bit delayed on it. So like normally like I wasn't the first person that was hearing it, but it was kind of trickling down to me. But at
Mm,
that point in the game, that was kind of where I wanted to be. I didn't need to be like right there knowing every bit of information because it kind of puts you in the midst of the chaos. But I kind of just tried to step back and let the information kind of trickle down, and then I was able to kind of maneuver around it, just kind of using that.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a game of information. It's a game of positionality. Yeah, no, super interesting the way that different people are maneuvering at this point. I really think we see a lot of different strategies. Lena also has a whole bunch of good segments in this episode, kind of talking about her perspective, and she was so ready for the challenge, and then on the Doves, right, we have this group of four that's kind of fake and not really real, which I think is also really interesting because, like, whoa, this is an example of the Doves being fake with each other, right? This kumbaya group, all of a sudden, like, Kelsey and Hannah are lying to Jude and Dunker. We kind of have this more interesting dynamic starting to grow, and maybe even some seeds of mistrust, despite everyone choosing still not to cast a vote at the upcoming tribal council. And so I want to jump into that. I think the segment, Ryan, where we cut to you, and we address the move bitch situation from the previous episode, I think it's so funny that this becomes like a thing at Tribal where everyone's like, we don't like Iman, like, we don't like the snakes, they're mean to Ryan. Like, I think it's so funny that this becomes like a plot point at the Tribal Council, even in the next episode.
I'm just gonna say people keep sending me this shit though, like fucking like my family and my friends, just like people I just like tangentially like kind of know. Like literally as soon as the fucking episode came out, like I just get like text after text of like, oh my god, like you got fucked, like you got like all these just texts of like I can't escape it. I forgot that it was the third episode because I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go on this like podcast. I don't have to talk about the move bitch thing. Like it'll be fine because it's the third episode. I'm like, fuck, I just question at tribal. But I mean, honestly, kind of like what I said was true. I'm like, we all kind of that was like a bonding thing. Like all the entire just like, you know what, like fuck him on, like we don't want him to win, like we don't like him. That was like, I mean, we didn't really know him. It was just it's fun to just hate and it's fun to like just like shit on people. So like it was I think that was like mostly it. Like I was honest, I'm like, I don't even really remember what he said. But I know it's just fun to just kind of be like, oh, like that other like one person just like screw him. So yeah, it was yeah, I don't know. But that memory is just like burned in like my head. That's like when I think about this season, it's like that moment and it's like that only moment that I think about. Like that's
Yeah.
just like permanently like etched into my brain.
It's inescapable, I'm sure. But I mean, yeah, you definitely can argue that that was in some ways fuel to the fire behind like the common enemy of the snakes of we can't vote, we need the numbers advantage, they suck, we hate them. Um, yeah, no, I thought that was like a really interesting moment and kind of shows like that unity. And then we cut over to the snake side, and Annika's like, I hope that guy Jude goes home, and it's like he's immune, and she's like, oh, I didn't say that, right? But that was super funny as well. Yeah, no, Lucas, did you feel like there was that same like animosity towards the Doves, or was everyone more just like focused on themselves in your view?
I think for the most part, people focus on our tribe more, but I think we definitely like had a bit of, I guess, ego about ourselves as like the snake tribe. Like we felt, I guess, like kind of like a superiority complex. Like we felt like we were like the stronger tribe. We felt like we were the more fun tribe. We felt like, we were the ones who were like actually playing, and the doves were just kind of quiet and awkward. And like even going back to the first day when we saw them standing there and we're all chatting and having a good time, and they're all just kind of standing there like waiting for the game to begin. It was just a really different dynamic. But I think most of the time, like we got caught up in our own drama, but definitely there was some of that like we're gonna beat them because like we're stronger, like we're more cunning, like that kind of vibe.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. Karina, I'm curious from the behind the scenes perspective, like, do you really see that on the Doves end? Like, they really don't like the snakes.
Yeah, it's interesting. On the first episode, there was a question that they asked all the contestants, which was like, what do you think the theme of the season was? And after they had like seen each other from opposite sides of the court, a lot of people were saying extroverts versus introverts, because the snake tribe was so like vocal with each other, and the Dove tribe was like very reserved. And I think like in general, and then when you tell people like these are the snakier people, these are the dovier people, like to go back to Lucas's point, and at a certain point, it is a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like maybe if you hadn't said this, people would be a little bit braver to make snaky moves on the Dove tribe, but because they were labeled as doves, like it just didn't happen. Um, but no, I think that like in general, I definitely saw that, yeah, there was a lot of hatred towards the snakes from the Dove side. But what I noticed a lot from the snakes was not so much as like we hate them, but it's more like we're just better than them in general. And there were a lot of moments where it was just like the Doves are boring and we're interesting, and like at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Like that was really that energy from the snakes. It wasn't like we want to vote them out. It was just like we're gonna get all the screen time. And they were right. Like they did get all the
They
screen
do get a
time.
lot of the screen time. Yeah, that's really funny. Ryan, I was gonna say also your story of everyone sending this clip to you reminded me of in my season, spoiler alert, when Charlie gets voted out, in his exit confessional, he goes, Simona, you're a snake bitch and I hate you. And I remember like my mom sent that to me and she was like, that's not okay. He can't say that. They can't put that online. Like she was really upset about it. I think it's funny that instead people are like sending it to you like clowning on you. I mean, in that situation, you did absolutely nothing wrong. Um, yeah.
My own family like sent it to me as like LMAO, you got fucked in this episode. I'm like, yeah, that was uh, but
It's iconic and it's a great moment, and I fear if it it traumatized you, that's unfortunate, and we apologize sincerely as production, but
That's
it is
why
Not
that's
to
why
iconic.
that's
like
why we signed the waiver. So
Right, yeah, that's what the waiver's for, right? The move bitch.
not
Um
to like dwell too much on this comment, but I will say like when the project was handed to me and we were talking about episode like names, I don't remember any of the suggested episode names except for that one because it was like we're gonna talk about episode names, but by the way, episode 2, it has to be called Move Bitch. Like there's no option there, like you have to do it. Like there's no requirement for this project except for this. And I was like, okay, this is the moment of the season.
it's so funny. That's awesome.
honestly, if it wasn't the name of the episode, I would have been so disappointed. I was not gonna watch the rest of the season. Like it had to be the fucking move, bitch. Like it had to. There's no universe where like it wasn't like that wasn't the title of the second episode.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely iconic for sure. Okay, I want to jump into, just talking about Cameron going home ultimately, on the way out, Iman going, I did that, and then also, yeah, just like kind of I love at the end of the Doves tribal also how Evan's like, did you let the eventual winner of this season slip through your fingertips? That's such a good line. Like I watched this and I'm like, Evan, where are you getting this stuff from? Like as I'm currently jeffing, I'm like, where does he come up with this? Evan needs to write my script. Because it's so poetic. I mean, at this point, right, there's like a 50% chance that that's true. And so definitely really interesting to see how both of these tribals end really, really differently. Lucas, what was the energy like, would you say, after Cameron got voted out?
the energy was like I think it was mostly good, but there's definitely that bit of that like icky feeling because that was like the first like true blind side. Our first vote against Izzy was pretty, I'd say pretty straightforward because it was pretty clear what it was going to be. And I mean, she even knew it kind of going into tribal. But with Cameron, I mean, that was the first like true blind side of the game. Like everyone was lying to his face and he got voted out. And so like that, everyone just had that feeling of like, oof, like that's what it might feel like if you go home. And so it's a
Mm,
little bit unsettling, at least for me being there and just having that feeling of like, man, like it just got like the game just got real. Like after that vote, like you feel it that like okay, if you don't start playing and you don't keep up, like you might be the next one to get blindsided.
mm. And then Ryan, did you feel like was there any amount of like triumph of like, wow, it worked, like we really all didn't vote each other, like relief. And oh my God, the moment where Evan's pulling out the last vote and he goes, and the next person voted out, and then it's nobody, like, did your heart drop in that moment also?
Yeah, I'd say that was I'd say that was one of the more like stressful like tribals like throughout like the entire season, like in my experience, especially when Evan was like pulled out like the final like vote and was like about to show us. Like I thought, oh, like it definitely like didn't work. Like somebody wrote like somebody's name down. Like it could probably just be me going home. So yeah, it was definitely like super stressful at that point. But getting to your like original question, it did feel really good that like all of us had enough trust in each other to like agree upon like one like course of action. And especially, well, I guess like it would be in episode 4, but when we kind of like see like what we were able to accomplish and how like what we like theorized and what like we said like would happen actually did happen. It was fun seeing the snakes again, just knowing that like what we did was like right and actually worked out, and like we were actually like on like a better foot now because of it, because we all were kind of working together. So yeah,
Yeah.
it did.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, I want to jump more into, yeah, the perspective on like the game overall, the season so far. Karina, I know you said you have a confessional counter and it's been mentioned lightly. I'd love to hear where we're at right now.
Yeah, okay. So I was mostly keeping track of this just to make sure that, you know, I'm giving everybody some screen time. I will say when it comes to confessionals, I would have a spreadsheet usually tracking like how many segments am I giving each person just to make sure like everyone has a chance to talk. I'm sure everyone is watching this and wants to see themselves. So it was more about that, but then I think Cameron brought it up in the first after show and was like, I'd love to see what the counts are for that. So I was like, I pulled up some numbers here. And I was wondering if you guys wanted to guess. In first place, as of the first 3 episodes, there's 3 people tied with an average of 3.3 confessionals per episode. And I'm curious if you guys have a guess as to who those people might be.
I got one. I think Lena, I would say, is one of those.
Oh, that wouldn't have been my guess. I was gonna say, um, I mean, I was gonna say Iman, but he didn't really get much screen time this episode, actually. Or at least wasn't super memorable, at least to me in the grand scheme. I was gonna maybe say Elena, just because like the idol, and she's definitely like narrating, I think, a lot on the dub tribe right now.
The third episode, at least, I know it was a lot of Dia, Annika, Vince. So I was gonna say like probably like one of those three. But yeah, and it's like Iman. I don't know, someone from the
Wow.
snake.
Okay, I think you guys are all gonna be pretty shocked. It's Kelsey, Dunker, and Jude.
Whoa!
So
Oh,
you were all wrong.
we're wrong!
Dang.
We guessed like the half the cast and we were wrong. Oh my
So I
God.
think
That's true. They
That
do
when it
go
comes
back and forth like a ton on the Dove tribe. It's like it goes like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like back and forth. So that does make sense. That's
yeah,
interesting though.
I think what it comes down to is it's much more of a technical thing. I think Kelsey and Jude were 2 people who were really good at recording their thoughts in the moment. Every time they would have a conversation, they'd like pull up their phone. And Lucas, you were pretty good about this too, which is like pull up your phone, talk about what just happened. And so that gives me a lot of footage to use. So when we're talking about different like conversations that are happening, it's like, oh, here's a self-tape that Kelsey did. Let me use that really quick. So they were like really good narrators on the Dove Tribe. And Dunker, he just like notoriously had the longest like confessionals. Like he would have like 30, 40 minute confessionals that I would have to like sit through and watch, which like at the end of the day is gonna give you a lot of, screen time because you're talking about a lot. But I also think last episode, I don't know if you noticed, but there were no segments for the snakes. And I think that ultimately is what hit your guys' numbers. I think the only snakes who had confessionals in that episode were Lena, Nia, and Cameron. And that was just because like, nothing was happening. So they were like, we don't have anything to talk about. But I do think like, yeah, I was more surprised that Iman and Annika did not have more. I was very surprised that Lucas, you didn't have more because, like, to me, I feel like you did narrate a lot, but usually it was like all in one segment instead of like you said, going back and forth. If you were curious, you were in second place with an average of 3. And then Ryan, you were tied with Annika for the least amount of confessionals. So you guys had an average of 1.6 per episode, which
Mm.
is really interesting. So we'll see how that changes as the season progresses.
Yeah.
I love looking at those kinds of numbers. Because when I run a Survivor draft with my friends during like the actual seasons, something that we factor in is you get a point for every confessional that you have. Like you draft a different person every episode effectively, and then I like do all the scoring and stuff. And so I've started to kind of step into the seat of like every episode I go through and I look at how many confessionals each player has, and it's really interesting the way that, you kind of see the storytelling and the ways you're able to predict and not predict. When I'm trying to pick my person for next week, right, I want to pick someone who's going to have a lot of confessionals in the next episode, so it's like, well, if they had a lot of confessionals this episode, does that mean they're going to get a lot the next episode too, or are they going to get less the next episode? And so I think it's really interesting, even in our own silly little show, to see like the ways that those numbers play out and manifest as the season goes on. So I'm definitely curious to keep track. I want to jump into like, what is it like to like really just have this experience as a whole, to be on the show and to watch it back, now 2 years later. I know there's definitely a little bit of fear, and Ryan, we were talking about that a little bit. You've been getting a lot of messages from family and stuff. And that's probably part of what it's like watching it back for you. But yeah, I'm really curious, like, how this experience affected you, like, what it was like really being on it, and like now watching it back, like, I don't know. For me, it's bringing back a lot of the joy, and I hope for you it is as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird like looking back on it because it was like 2 years ago, and I think a lot has changed, and I think just me personally, I've like changed a lot from when I was like filming Survivor, like filming our season. So it's weird looking back on because I'm like, oh wait, that is me. But like I I I feel like I've grown and I've just learned a lot from Survivor, and it's changed how like I interact with. I don't know. I feel like I've just changed a lot, like as a person. I've learned a lot, like through Survivor. So it's weird looking back on because I'm like, oh, that is me. But I'm like, I don't know. It's weird looking back on it. It brings back like a whole bunch of like memories like from the seasons, and it gets me nostalgic just for like school and like the club. So it's been like really neat like looking back on and like rewatching like the episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously like kind of knew you at the start of casting and we're friends now, and I think like I've definitely seen like that growth, at least in like my understanding as you as a person, and maybe that was just me getting to know you better over time. But I think like with a lot of these people, I saw them before they played and now I'm like at least aware of them after they've played, and it's really, really awesome and interesting to see how people change. Lucas, what about you?
Survivor is like looking back on it, like it was one of those periods, like when you're in it, that like you don't think so much about like what it'll be like after because you're just like so into it. But I feel like now, kind of looking back, and especially like Ryan said, like having that time to look back on it is something like very fond memories, like very fond of just like that thing I did while I was in college. It's just like it's just a little crazy. But I think the biggest thing that's come out of it for me is just like community. Like I think I've met just so many friends, like even just like post-production, just like the other castaways and everything like that. Like there's just a lot of people I've met and connected with and people that I hang out with on a regular basis, including yourself, Simona. And
Friends, I love Friends.
so it was a very positive experience just in general. And yeah, nothing much more to say.
Yeah, I remember when I was writing the script for the start of season 7, something that I remember writing and like felt a lot of like power in saying was that like this could be the start of like one of the most defining experiences of your undergraduate career. And that's so cliche and cheesy to say because this is this silly little thing that we do. But I think like from doing this podcast so far and just, from being in the club myself for 3 to 4 years at this point, like I think it does, if you embrace it, really impact you, and a lot of people like undergo a lot of growth maybe as a result of it, or maybe it's just a coincidence. But I think it's really awesome to see. um Karina, obviously you weren't on season 4, but how, I'm curious how editing you feel like has impacted how you view the game.
Yeah. I will say, like, I came in to this whole experience. I'm a huge reality TV fan. I'm very into like the strategic and gameplay aspect of it. And I literally like editing is definitely a very different experience. It's usually like me at 2 in the morning, like clicking away on my computer. There's not a lot of socializing in that. Um, but I will say like it gives you such a like magnifying glass on like everything. Like I feel like if any season 4 contestant would come to me and say like, okay, what did I do wrong? Like I could give you a whole laundry list because not only have I heard every word that you've said, but I've heard every word that people have said about you, you know? And so it's like it really like makes me realize, okay, what do people do that rubs people the wrong way, specifically in like this kind of setting? And it's like now when I watch these shows in real life, like, I watch these things and I'm like I can clock something from a mile away and be like, that's gonna get them in trouble in like 3 episodes. And usually I'm right because, I go through with a magnifying glass on every single little word that people are saying and I see the consequences of those actions. And so it's like to me, it's like we're filming a season right now, and I'm in charge of like, keeping track of all that footage. And I'll go through and I'll listen to some of those just like to make sure that everything's okay. And already, like, I start to feel like, oh, this is the mark of a winner. The things that this person is saying and the things that they're saying about them, like, this person's going to go far. And I think that's like, I don't know, I've developed a brain for it that I feel like a lot of people just don't have, right now because they don't have to do this.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's really interesting. I'm definitely texting you for my draft picks in season 48 for sure. You're gonna help me out. Um, but yeah, no, I think it's really cool how the season is coming together. You're doing a fantastic job, Karina. I think everyone's like, if you've watched the other after shows and like Lucas and Ryan just said it, like it's awesome to watch it back. And so I think like yeah, it's very appreciated and it's phenomenal. Like it looks awesome. The last thing I want to jump into before we conclude is player of the episode. So currently our standing. Episode 1, we have 3 for Iman, 1 for Lucas. Episode 2, we have 2 for Jude, 1 for Elena, 1 for Kelsey. What are people's thoughts on player of the episode for episode 3?
Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. Okay. I think seeing it for the first time, I knew what happened with the doves, and it was kind of good on like all of our parts that like what we had like crafted and like theorized and what we were like planning to do actually did work. But I don't want to like say a dove. Uh, it was really interesting seeing like some of the snakes. Like I thought Nia was kind of like putting herself in a good position where she wasn't like ahead of like everything and like getting like caught in like the midst of like all the chaos I feel, but like kind of like uh putting herself into a position where she can extract like a whole bunch of information and she's like behind like a whole lot of things. So I think that just setting herself up to be like in a really like advantageous position for like future episodes, I thought it was like really clever because she was like behind like a lot of stuff but wasn't necessarily like getting like caught or like in the midst of like all the chaos. And so I just think that she put herself in a really good position like moving forward. So I appreciate that, and I'd probably give my vote to Nia. I'd say I didn't know a lot about it beforehand because it was obviously the snakes, but yeah, that's what I would vote for.
Yeah, Lucas, what about you?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna have to agree with Ryan. I also think my vote will go to Nia. I think through this episode, and especially having played with her in the game, but also now having watched it back with a combination of both, I think it's really evident that I think her and I actually, we kind of started on the same path of trying to integrate with everyone, but I think she actually in this episode specifically did it better than I did. I think she connected with pretty much everyone on the tribe and she integrated herself really well. And like, I don't think ever up until this point that anyone ever mentioned trying to vote out Nia. I don't think there was ever distrust. I think she was locked in. And so I think she definitely deserves the vote for this episode.
Interesting. Karina, what about you?
I definitely do think that like yeah, Nia is like a probably in one of the top spots here. And again, just like play a little bit of devil's advocate, but also like I don't know, going a little bit further. I think I honestly might have to give it to you, Lucas, and I'll explain why. I think the thing about Nia's game here is that yes, she's doing a really good job like socially of like integrating herself. But you had mentioned this before, Simona, like you can't be friends with everybody because eventually you're gonna have to vote someone out, and that's gonna show your hand really fast. And the thing about Nia is I think, yes, she does have all the information, but it's also like she's gotten a little bit lucky by being able to find people that are a consensus vote. If you look forward, Nia is really close with Lena and Annika. Nia is really close with Iman, Vince, and Lucas. Who's going next? What's gonna happen to her? You know? Whereas I think, Lucas, you put yourself in a situation where you probably had almost all the same information that Nia had, except you aren't as close with all of these people. You won't have to deliberately backstab somebody and then deal with like the fallout of that. And I think like, especially in early merge at this point in the game, that is going to bring you farther long term. So
Interesting.
Appreciate
Interesting.
it.
Okay. I
Definitely.
I was also going to say Nia, I think. Um, I'm I would say honorable mentions to Annika because I think she really catapults herself forward this episode. And I would also say honorable mentions just to the Dove tribe as a whole. I think like the ability to not vote anyone out like shows a lot of like trust. And I think that's definitely like worth noting. But yeah, I think Nia's in a really central position here. She is really sneaky and snaky. And I do agree with you, Karina, that she is in a tough spot if she has to go back. However, I don't think she's gonna be like from this position in any immediate danger. I think like say she had to vote out Lena, like Annika showed her the clue first, right? I think she would be able to mend with Annika in that situation. Though I definitely think it's cagey, and I've been there, so like, I resonate for sure. But yeah, so three for Nia, one for Lucas. Lucas, you're at two now, so you're definitely up in the ranks. And Ryan, your time will come, perhaps. But yeah, that's all I have. Does anybody have anything else they want to throw in before we wrap up?
I mean, this isn't really anything like important, but the snake like tribal, just like with the blind side, I guess. My favorite part of the episode is like you can just hear Lena like in the background as like the audio cuts. The end is just like he has to not see that, and it doesn't even like fully like she doesn't even fully finish because the audio cuts off. But it's just funny because like at the ends, it's just like oh his ass did not see that coming. I just like that. Like me and my family were just like talking about like that last like quip at the end. It was just I don't know. It was just like funny, and I wasn't there for Snake Tribal obviously, but it was just so it's funny seeing all the things that like I hadn't like seen before. Cause I'm like, oh damn, that was like I don't know a cool moment or that was a funny moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it was a
Uh,
really great episode. Lucas, did you have something?
oh no, I was just gonna say my last piece. Go ahead.
No, please go for it.
Oh no, I was gonna say just shout out to production and especially Karina because that was a lot of footage to go through and you're doing a great job. So thank you very much. I know all of us are very happy to see it. I have friends, family who will watch it or have watched it and are enjoying it. So shout out to Karina.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
shout out to Jude's dad, who I think has been DMing the Instagram account pretty consistently asking when the episodes are gonna come out. So here they are. Yeah, Karina, major shout out. And thank you all for being here. Ryan, you're in Japan right now, and Lucas, it's a Friday night. Karina, for you as well. So thank you guys so much for being here. I love doing this. It brings me so much joy. But yeah, that's all we have for episode 3 of the after show of season 4. Tune in next Sunday at 8 for the next episode. Thank you guys so much.